M. The Media Project.
My partner, Ethan DeSoto, and I believe that sharing more equity in our work and in our investments not only provides more opportunity to our neighbors, it's also what democracy is all about. I'm Scott M. Graves, and if you desire the opportunity to own real estate in a cooperative environment, one with experts who understand property and what it means to build wealth for all, join us at smgravesassociates.com/epic to find out more about the Exponent Property Investment Cooperative, or EPIC LLC.
Excuse me, do you mind if I join you? Are you sure you don't mind? You're absolutely sure about me to step here? We have the power to do anything we like. Absolute power over every particle in the universe.
Hello and welcome to the Mental Suppository. I'm Bret Herholtz. I am joined today by Andrew Shanley, Lisa Billings, Brian Brown, and Ainsley Waller, and we're continuing part 2 of our discussion from last week.
Yeah, and
I
it's
also
okay.
wonder.
Go ahead.
I also wonder for nerddom and kind of owning the stuff that you were into, either as a kid or as an adult or whenever you kind of discovered it. Is it because, you know, it was our own private thing, or is it because it was like undercover and not popular? Because I feel like a lot of people, like as soon as something becomes popular and like people are into it, they hate it automatically.
I think,
you know,
like
I
the best
feel
parallel.
like people hated the new Doctor Who just because it was mainstream, and people were like, "I hate the new Doctor Who."
Well, it's kind of like punk music, you know how
I like both
punk,
personally, but
yeah, I like both.
Yeah, I like both.
But
I mean, yeah, so do I.
But like,
Yeah.
you know, like with
But it's a
punk,
good
punk
question,
bands
yeah.
and punk fans, whenever
Yes.
the punk band became famous, they were like,
Yes,
"Oh,
I'm
you
a huge
suck!
punk fan.
You're against our original thing." Blah blah blah. And that's kind of a thing that's in the punk world, and I think
Yeah.
to a certain extent that exists in our kind of thing, but not to that level, or it's not as widely known or anything else like that. There is a certain exclusivity to being able to say, I'm into this, and you don't, you this is our club, and you da 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 da. But
Right.
at the same time, I do find it to be probably the best time to live in this kind of culture,
Because you can find that kind of stuff when you want it.
And you
Exactly.
can find people more easily who will share your joy and share the thing that you like with you. I think there is a little bit of, like, not to be over dramatic, but trauma that some folks did live through. Some of it was very real, probably getting beat up by people at school or whatever, because they were into Star Trek or too into Star Wars or whatever it is. So my example is, I have a coworker now who's this huge dude, like rippling muscles, like he was a Marine. He's you would think he plays sports. His thing that he does as a hobby is basically to chop wood. This guy, like, I would have been a little bit scared of him, or maybe not reaching out to be his BFF. I might have been worried that he would make fun of me if we would have been in high school together.
Does he
or
chop
something
wood like
that.
Steve Rogers and rip it in half?
I've never seen him, so I'm not sure. My team's out in LA, but I'm good. And now, from now on, that's how I'm imagining him, just ripping it with his bare hand. But so this ex-Marine, it turns out he's like the biggest Star Wars nerd. He watches nerd trivia tournaments. He can talk about every single little detail. He's also deep into Marvel, like beyond, with 20 theories and charts and spreadsheets. And it was nice for me to have this experience, and I've had it before too, to see, like, it's okay. This is no longer a tribal thing of social whatever, that's the weird trauma that some of us had in high school. This is like, now as adults, we can, that biggest jock in the whole world can admit how much he loves Star Wars, and I can be like, sweet dude, let's talk about it, and we can be buddies. And it's kind of nice. It was like a pleasant surprise as an adult.
I do wonder how much you know, what Lisa was talking about with Star Wars in particular was happening in 1977, when it was like the biggest movie in the world.
That's
Right,
good
because-
question.
Yeah.
Because like Star Wars was always popular from the early 80s through. As soon as it came out, it was
Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
But then you have like I'm just projecting here, but I imagine because it came out before I was born, but like the Star Trek people were probably a little upset.
Oh yeah.
That might have been
Well-
the root of the Star Trek versus Star Wars.
Could be. It is
Yeah,
a different. It's a
yes.
different type of fandom, and it's a different way of thinking.
It's like
about
chocolate vanilla,
It is chocolate vanilla for sure. For sure.
essentially.
Well, yeah, totally. But like, if you were like going to Star Trek conventions in 1977, and gosh, and like into computers and comic books and that kind of stuff, and then this movie comes out, and all the jock kids are wearing space shirts suddenly in your school, and they're still beating you up.
Yeah, you might be a little annoyed. I could see.
Good
that
call.
back in
I
the-
never
back in the day.
understood that whole like Star Wars versus Star Trek like
I always
argument.
like them both.
I like them both. You know,
my
I
husband
think.
does not like Star Trek. He is a Star Wars person specifically.
Mhm.
And I'll be honest, I love him. We have been together for 20 years. I mean, it like forever, right? And I don't get it. I love Star Trek so much.
Mhm.
I feel
And
like
even
I
if
know
you
people-
don't like one particular incantation, you know, like if you're not into the original series, I get it. It's a little campy, you know,
Yeah.
some of the dialogue's, you know, stilted. If you're not, you know, I mean, we don't need to torture ourselves watching the first movie again, you know, pretty bad. You know, I even get some of the, you know, some of the critiques about certain parts of it, but to hate all of Star Trek or to not get it, even when you like sci-fi, I don't know.
I love Star Trek: The Motion Picture. I think it's
Excellent.
It's the greatest
I have-
movie.
every minute of it.
It's much better than Cats. I'm going to see it again and again.
Again.
It was like a culmination of the plot of Star Trek Phase 2. Then it was to be a TV show that never happened, and then the Enterprise design was for Star Trek Phase 2 as well.
I think you also have like that's an emotional connection, much like people have with Star Wars that you have with the first, you know.
I think-
Trek movie.
Right.
I think my first
that's
exposure
okay.
to the whole like Star Wars people versus Star Trek people was when I went to see Fanboys. I don't know if anybody's seen that movie, but basically it's a comedy about this group of guys that go to Skywalker Ranch to see Phantom Menace because one of them has cancer, and they run into a bunch of Star Trek nerds, and the Star Trek nerds, it's not Star Trek in the movie, obviously, because they'll get in trouble, but it's just so funny because they were like fighting with each other, and there was this big, huge, I was like, why does this have to even happen? I don't even understand it.
Yeah.
So I don't get that. I think it's just
Yeah.
being, there are people that are generating clicks off of that, and it's just stupid, you know?
I haven't really run into it myself. Have y'all had
No.
personal interactions with? I mean,
Not
other than
really,
your
no.
marriage, obviously,
That's-
a blended
That's
Star
what I feel
Trek.
like. I feel
Star
like we're
Wars.
the generation.
Well, I'm definitely
Russell
as
Guys.
big of a Star Wars as I am Star Trek fan.
Yeah.
So I don't
Yeah.
think that for me, I
I
could
feel like
call
we're a
myself only a
generation-
Trekkie.
Yeah.
You know, I went and saw all the re-releases of the original movies. You were talking about, Andrew, you were talking about people cheering in the theater.
Yeah.
Well, I went on opening night of re-release of A New Hope, and we dressed
Yep.
up, which was like my first time I ever dressed up for something like that. And when he says, "I'm Luke Skywalker, I'm here to rescue you," people stood up and cheered.
Yeah, I do remember actually going to
People
the theater.
screaming in the theater for that.
I
Also, when he says, when Han Solo first comes on screen talking to Greedo,
oh yeah.
and people just lost their ever-loving minds. So,
Well, I mean, that was such a moment for us because I remember because when I went to see Star Wars the first time, it was my dad, my mom, and my sister went to the drive-in, and my dad had a toy book. He was like showing me the spaceships in the toy book, and he's like, "These are the good guys, these are the bad guys. This is a stormtrooper. This is Han. This is Luke, and all this other stuff." And I remember I had that toy book for years. It just had all the toys in it. It was like just having that was even better than just having the actual toys. But to be able to see it on the big screen again was such a moment. You know, I actually I have to admit that was a great theater going experience.
yeah.
You know, we're not going to see a lot of those.
Or the
movies
extra
again.
added footage, whatever, you know.
Yeah, I didn't care. It was Star Wars again.
Yeah,
It's going back
exactly.
to when I
Star
was a
Wars on the
kid.
big screen. Who cares?
You know.
I know people who like Star Wars that don't like Star Trek, but I don't know many people that are the opposite. And I think that's because it was okay to be a jock and like Star Wars. And the Star Trek people that didn't like Star Wars were from pre-1977 Star Trek fandom.
Yeah.
And they didn't like Star Wars because the people that beat them up did. And so I think now we're like in this place where, you know, for us, like we're past all that, and it's just so easy to be like, oh yeah, it's space stuff. Like
space stuff.
One is a fairy tale in space, and the other one is like science fiction-y monster of the week. Like,
well, I mean,
can train in space.
Like the other thing too is obviously like the way that the franchises have evolved. I mean, I think I remember, Lisa, it was you was mentioning like how much it changed from the original series to the next generation. And we saw in the next generation an amazingly even more diverse cast.
Right.
You know, I mean, we can talk about the original series, how Nichelle Nichols met up with Martin Luther King, and Martin Luther King, she said she was going to quit the show. And Martin Luther King was like, no, please, you got to stay on the show. You're a positive image for African Americans. You have to stay on the show. And that's the reason why she stayed with it. But like, you take a look at like the next generation, how, you know, you had characters like Dr. Crusher, you know, you had Ensign Rowe, which I loved as a character. You just had so many, you had Deanna Troi, which I really wish she stayed longer because I thought she was cool. She was a badass. You know, you had Geordie LaForge, who was a disabled person and became chief engineer. You had Data, who was an android trying to be human. You know, it was about people of different points of view coming together to solve a problem. Yeah. And that's what I liked about that and they kept going with that. They even did like with DS9, you know, Benjamin Sisko, you know, and that cast did an amazing job. And then they had Voyager, you know, with Catherine Janeway, you know, first female lead character in a sci-fi TV show. You know, and then like 20 years later, suddenly it was like, oh, we got the first Doctor Who is female. I'm like, wait a minute. We did that 20 years ago.
Where have you been?
Lady Doctor. Yeah, we are also not mentioning that season 1 had men in miniskirts.
Never forget the men in miniskirts in TNG. It's so great too. Like that's why I love to see that progression that you're talking about with Trek, because it's almost the spirit of Gene Roddenberry that the 1960s Star Trek is not going to look like the 2020. No. And that's because it was always him looking forward. And when it was in the 80s, it was the 80s version of looking forward. Right. So we're all looking forward. And like with Discovery, I watched the first few episodes and I'm kind of like, this is kind of actiony. I don't know about this. And then for me, it clicked over into like, oh, they're looking forward. They
are looking forward, and it's super dark.
Red of Roddenberry, right? Coming through.
It's super dark. Discovery is very...
Yeah, that's dark.
It is pretty dark. I agree.
It's a different flavor.
It's appropriately dark, I think.
It's a different flavor. And you know what the other thing too is? It doesn't take away the fact that the other Trek exists. You know?
Not at all. It pays tribute to the other Trek in a really nice way, I think, bringing in Pike and the Mirror Universe and those things that we love from, you know, the other Star Trek franchise moments. Yeah.
I think that they should do a Mirror Universe series.
Fully agree. Obsessed.
That would be really cool.
I agree completely. I have to say the 2009 Star Trek movie, to be honest, obsessed with that movie. I mean, absolutely obsessed. I know that it screwed with a lot of people and their historic love of whatever, but I love that movie. I felt like all of the actors were just on point embodiments of what they needed to cast the cast as.
Well, not only that, the actual personification of those characters, they were very diligent in making sure that they got the actual mannerisms, like Anton Yelchin being Chekhov.
Yes,
that was on point.
Yes,
I had two problems with that movie. I really mostly enjoyed it. It was a fun ride. I had two problems with that movie. One, the entire premise is based off of that Spock was going out to do a science experiment and screwed it up so bad that he blew up a planet and like several planets. And like, I'm like, okay, Spock, like that is so not Spock to like screw up a science experiment that bad. And then the other thing was that they made up this completely, why did you even do that origin story for Bones, for the nickname Bones?
By the way, I've heard about
like,
this since 2009.
It drives me, it's just one line, it drives me crazy. It's just like, oh yeah, my wife left me with nothing but my bones. Like, it was like the writers didn't even know that Sawbones was a nickname for doctors, and that's where.
All right, I'll let you hate that one line.
Yeah. I mean,
it's that's a fair cop, and I thought it was a fun ride too. I couldn't get into the deep nerdy hatred of like the timelines and stuff like
Everything
that.
else I thought was great.
But it was fun, and it brought other people into the fandom, which I enjoyed. I liked going to the convention the next year and seeing people in more Star Trek gear, and I would be in my like TOS lieutenant outfit, and I'd be like, all right, oh yeah, you get it. It'd be fun. Like, it was cool.
Yep.
It was cool. But yes, that Bones line was unforgivable.
I
must say.
I don't remember anything in Captain Kirk versus Sherlock Holmes.
You know, the thing about prequels is, and I think I've always made this analogy as you make, it's like, I always look at prequels like for example, you build a house. The house is the first movie. Then, hey, the house is great. We got to add a second story to it. So you put another story on top of the building. And then like, hey, we should do a third movie, a third story. Oh, let's put a third story. Now let's do a prequel. Let's put a basement in there now. And now you get a big building. You got to put a basement underneath these three. So as long as it doesn't collapse on yourself while you're building the basement, you know, that's kind of how I always looked at prequels, because those are always the hardest parts, because you have to have all these little things kind of put into place. And
yeah, I mean, it's why I think Enterprise fell flat in some instances.
I just recently binged
certain obsessive storylines. You were like, what?
Mm-hmm.
It just didn't hold. And I almost feel like they didn't think that series was going to be so successful, and so it kept going too long. And so they kind of were like, okay, well, we'll just add more of this person or add more of this alien race. And they kind of didn't know exactly where to go with it. I mean, I really loved that show.
I thought it was a good show. There was a lot of good writing. Scott Bakula did a great job in it.
Scott Bakula is, I mean, that's why I watched it, because, I mean, I watched Quantum
He's great.
Leap. I always like it was my job when it was on. So.
Quantum Leap ever.
Oh, you're waiting for Al to show up. Sam!
Ziggy says you gotta blow Romulus.
Well, speaking of beloved franchises, I kind of wanted to talk about another one that I really liked growing up that most people may or may not consider, and that would be Mystery Science Theater 3000.
Oh, yeah.
How can we not talk about that show?
I can actually remember the first time I saw that show is because my grandparents had cable, and on Saturdays we'd go over to visit them. And so one Saturday, and I had to have been like in the 7th or 8th grade at the time. It had to have been like 88, 89. I'm misremembering. But I just happened to turn over to the Comedy Channel. Remember before it was Comedy Central?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The Comedy Channel.
I just happened to tune in, and they were showing the episode The Robot Monster. I don't know if you guys, that was the first episode of Mystery Science Theater I ever saw, and I ended up finding out more about the movie later. I don't know if you guys remember it. The robot had like a robot head or a diver's head and a gorilla suit, because I don't think they could afford a whole robot body. And I just remember
doing the best with what you got.
Skull mask.
Yes.
Inside the window there was a skull mask, and he had a gorilla suit.
They just went through an old costume room in the back and found every little piece they could.
What do we got for a robot costume? All we got is this diver's helmet and a gorilla costume, but the gorilla's head is missing.
And I can see the show.
We can make a bong out of this, or we can make a monster.
And I can see the show, and it's like they're showing the movie, but then there's like these little figures down below in the seats making these comments, and I'm just realizing, and you don't at first realize they're making the comments, then you realize it's like you've got like these witty comments going, you know, being mentioned during the episode. It's like, what's going on here? But then after that one, suddenly you want to see more of it.
Oh my God, that show
Very
is so
addictive.
addictive.
Yes.
That show,
So
yeah.
addictive. So
I
addictive.
remember
It was in the Midwest. I mean, they were the ones that they are said to be the ones that sort of created the whole genre of riffing.
and
Absolutely.
I love
Don't tell
that.
Elvira that.
Oh,
I will not tell Elvira that.
Well,
Oh, God,
Elvira
no.
has her own style of riffing. She kind
It's
of
special.
mixes it up. It's a very special.
But this was like
and
riffing during the movie, though. I don't know if she did
Elvira is
that.
amazing. But I
She's
remember
her own unique
Yeah.
wonderfulness.
She would appear during the movie sometimes.
She did. She did do comments
Yeah, they'd be
sometimes.
boop, and she'd be like, "Oh, some weird comment about." I don't know.
Sort of like the old Creature double feature, like the host showing up in between. Sort of like what Sven Gulli does now, right?
No,
Yeah,
like
no, really,
Elvira's
in the
head would
middle of it.
appear on
Oh!
the screen.
Oh,
like, green
okay, I'm
screen out, and she would make some joke about the drapes matching the curtains or something like that, and then
they would
Okay, I
and they would have
misunderstood.
some
Okay.
very unique films. They would always have like motorcycle biker movies, and they would have like
Wild
007
Rebels.
ripoffs.
Yes.
I think the
Oh,
first.
yeah, they had Neil Connery, Sean Connery's
Yeah, Neil
brother.
Connery.
Neil Connery, the man
Which-
with the golden arm.
Yeah, and that was actually a spoof that they made in the 1960s, and they have all these old Bond like actors in a James Bond spoof on Mystery Science Theater 3000, and I was just like, holy crap, I can't believe this. This is so awesome.
There was the great scene where he's coming into the airport and there's like this band like playing in the airport, and like, what is this, the Penguin Band? Because it sounds like the Penguins singing. And there's the one riff that goes, do I have enough time to punch the band? But just the comments were just, it's like, it always went back to that, just like these great, and I didn't realize later they weren't doing this like off the cuff. This was all,
Uh-oh.
like scripted. And,
Yeah,
really
yeah.
like plan, and you really kind of have to, because you can kind of tell when somebody's like, sort of doing it off the cuff, which a lot of the times you can get some great riffs out of it. But I mean, shows like this, you really kind of have to script it out, especially over a long series.
The
I
best
think the
ones.
original ones that they did on like public access, they originally just sort of watched the movies and made the comments as they were watching it.
I remember
And
some
then
of the.
eventually scripted it.
Yeah.
They just basically was all off the cuff, but some of my favorite ones were like ones that, because I was a big bad movie fan myself
God.
before that show even started, but it would be funny when they had a movie that I saw and be like, oh my God, they're going to riff the movie I've seen before? This is awesome.
Yeah,
That is
Yeah.
super fun.
I
Yeah.
get to see it again in a whole different way.
And then they
I-
just make all kinds of jokes. It's funny as hell.
It was so good. I also loved cheesy movies and laughing until I cried at them as a
Oh,
kid.
yeah.
So before I saw that, I was already like primed for this hilarity. And I watched it, and like you, Bret, I wasn't sure. I didn't understand that it was deeply scripted. Kind of figured it out pretty soon. I was like, okay, yeah, this is scripted. But the jokes are so rapid fire, so multi-layered, and their references and their delivery are so good. I'd come from like enjoying Saturday Night Live and Monty Python, and I want to do comedy stuff. So when I eventually, like as a kid, I'm like, I want to be smart enough and with enough references in my head right off the cuff so that I can write like an MST3K full
Oh,
episode.
yes.
And I made it my goal to do that. So by the time I hit like living in New York and doing like long form improv, I felt like Mystery Science Theater 3000 had prepared me.
There is something about being a nerd and having a desire to be like quicker than everybody, like wittier.
Yes.
I guess, like, because I definitely was there too. Like, I just had to be like, I was
Absolutely.
always. By the time I did improv, I was like, I've been doing this my whole life because
Oh,
I
yeah.
just say the first thing.
I think it's
load my
because
brain
I'm
with
so
stuff,
awkward in
say the first
every
thing.
other situation that I
Yeah.
feel like I gotta have something.
Yeah.
I
Exactly.
gotta be good and quick at something. Because I was never, I attempted to play sports growing up. Never went very well because it wasn't fast enough. I wasn't super coordinated. I loved doing theater in high school, but I can't dance for shit. So you got to be funny, right? It's like, I'm not calling anybody here, including myself, ugly, but it's like, if you're ugly, you better be funny, So,
Right.
so
And it's
gotta
really
have-
true.
you got to have that thing going
Kitty.
on. Oh, you're kitty. So cute.
If you're stupid, you better be tough.
If you're stupid,
Exactly.
My
you're
mother used to say.
right. And It's true too that like when you are dealing with bullies, and this often happens, I think, with kids who get bullied at school, sometimes they're nerds, sometimes they're queer folk or whatever. If you have a good comeback ready, whatever that is, and you're quick-witted, you can often, it's a good dodge and a good defense against that sort of thing.
It's like mental karate.
It's mental karate or judo. Exactly.
What fascinated me watching Mystery Science 3000 was always that I always like, how the F did they find these movies?
Oh, the stories. I guess they had movies sent to them.
Yeah.
Like one of them,
Wow.
Manos, the Hands of Fate, was a movie that was actually it was like shown like once or twice at a drive-in in like in Texas, and it just got kind of lost in obscurity, and it ended up being placed on the desk of Frank Conniff, TV's Frank. And they ended up showing that movie, and it was Mystery Science Theater that made that movie famous. There's a lot of movies. Coleman Francis was another one.
I mean, now modern times, it's like you can find anything on the internet.
Oh, yeah.
This was out, in the 90s when you couldn't find obscure things. And I just remember watching it thinking, wow.
This generation will never know the horror of going into a record store and trying to find that one CD you want to buy for $20.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's true. It's true.
I think
Actually, I remember going in and being really upset because I didn't have a CD player and being very angry that one of my favorite bands was not releasing their album on a tape. And I was so pissed that I was going to have to go and buy a CD player so that I could listen to that.
So there used to be this package called Shock Theater, and because I used to do a horror host thing on Twitch for a bit.
Oh, okay. I think I've seen a little bit of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and we turned into a virtual drive-in now. But yeah, we used to do the Spook Party show with Max the Clown.
Yep.
And that was a horror host show. But anyway, so I did a bunch of research on it. So there used to be a package of these movies that you could just buy in bulk called Shock Theater. And that's where all the horror hosts got everything because you have to license those things. So you would pay a flat sum and get this huge crate of B movies.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the Mystery Science Theater stuff came from that. I mean, the Manos Hands of Fate, by the time they're in their late seasons, it's a completely different story.
A lot of these movies they had to pay the rights for, and I think Manos cost them the whole paltry sum of about $5.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean,
and yet it's one of the top classics of MST3K.
But I think that was the great thing about the show is they didn't initially play like the Plan 9 or the Attack of the 50-Foot Woman movies that you'd figure would be ridiculed. They found they did the deep digging and finding these Oh, that's okay. They found these deep movies, like The Corpse Vanishes with Bela Lugosi, or Manos, or like the movies of Coleman Francis that should just be burned. Gordon. Red Zone Cuba, The Skydivers. There was another one, Beasts of Yucca Flat with Tor Johnson being Tor Johnson.
Oh yeah,
well, one of the worst of all.
Warrior of the Lost World, one of my favorites.
Oh,
the guy with the motorcycle.
Yes.
Paper chase guy.
They had a great skit of in between of the Joel as the warrior of the lost world being driven by his mother.
Mega weapon.
Yes. Oh, there was also the one City Limits, which had James Earl Jones in it.
Oh my God.
And Ray Dong Chung and Kim Cattrall.
I mean, how bad does your movie career have to go when you end up on Mystery Science Theater 3000?
Ask Jack Palance. Outlaws of Gore.
Yeah, he's
so many.
Many.
But I mean, there are a couple of good ones in there, like Jack Palance. Like obviously his career took a left turn. We sadly know this. And I loved him as a kid. Like I thought he was awesome. But Kim Cattrall, she went on to do good things.
Crow's Kim Cattrall song.
City folk.
I'm going to do a song about my favorite actress, Kim Cattrall.
Let's all have a Roadhouse Christmas.
I could sing that whole song, which I will not do. But MST3K was so much in my family that at the holidays, at Thanksgiving, my sister and I sing many a Turkey Day song. We would watch MST3K. When the Christmas holiday rolls around, we watch Roadhouse usually over the holidays and sing the Roadhouse. Like definitely like a nerdy house.
I know that they still do it. They still have they do riff tracks now, but I would love to see them do Roadhouse.
Oh, you want to see the riff tracks guys do a new riff to Roadhouse?
I want to see that happen.
Oh, right. That's right. It hasn't happened. They just reference it.
Yeah.
You are correct. I would live to see that. That
would be the ultimate.
Santa Claus Conquers the Martians was like the big, Christmas watching for us because we'd go over Christmas Eve over my grandparents, and Mystery Science would be on, and I just remember just being in tears watching. Santa Claus Conquers the Martians. Like they have the reporter going in to, interview Santa, and one of the guys, get the hell out of my shop.
How about
get the hell out of my workshop? Yeah.
Have you seen the new? Have you guys seen the new Mystery Science Theater 3000? They did.
I didn't mind it.
Seasons.
Yeah. I have.
Oh my god.
I liked it.
That was great. So funny.
It was really good, and
and the movies they found were just as horrific.
Oh my god,
just horrific.
Star Crash with David Hasselhoff.
Where he crashes on the island and is like traveling around.
It's got Caroline Munro wearing next to nothing, which she mostly did in a lot of her movies.
Right, but then it just that movie. It fascinated me with how terrible that movie is because it literally makes no sense.
Well, they kind of took the idea of George Lucas's idea of kit bashing and putting sets together or putting models together, but forgetting to take the tabs off them or trees off the models, and just
shit. God. Oh my god!
I actually own Star Crash on DVD.
Do you?
And they totally rip off. The funny thing about Star Crash is that's how David Hasselhoff got the job to do Michael Knight for Knight Rider.
Really?
Glenn,
was it one of those we'll give you one more try?
He actually it was him and somebody else, but basically they said okay, we'll give you a shot, and he became Michael Knight because of that movie.
That's amazing.
And
another great spin-off. It's on Tubi TV. If you guys get to watch another great MST spin-off, Cinematic Titanic, which has most of the original MST cast, the original MST cast on it. It's just it's hysterical because they really dig deep for these movies. Like there's just movies that are just like I had never heard of, like the Using Skull, Danger on Tiki Island, which has this actress on it who's just like oozing sex the whole time, just like it's like she's making love to every line she's saying, because he's like talking about just like wanting to we should just get a good night's sleep in a nice firm wonderful bed. And I think it was like Mary Jo just goes, I'm too sexy for my lines.
I think that the biggest impact that Mr.
Actually, there was another line. J. Elvis Weinstein says, he goes, oh, she's hornier than Mrs. Roper.
I think one of the biggest impacts that Mystery Science Theater 3000 had, obviously, was it did include riffing, and it's become a sport in a sense now, because now whenever I see a bad movie, I can just watch a bad movie and make jokes in my head and laugh at it, just automatically, like off the cuff. And
same here. Nobody else might laugh at my jokes, but I can still. I'm thinking in my head, it's like
I laugh at myself all the time.
My guilty pleasure these days is watching CinemaSins.
CinemaSins.
Do not know CinemaSins?
No.
It's a YouTube thing, and they take a movie and they just go through it, and they don't do the whole movie. They do the whole thing in about 15 minutes tops, but they just go through all of the things about like cliches or lack of continuity, and they will trash any movie and just be like, that plot line makes no sense. And you're like, and sometimes it's a movie you've seen and you're like, you're right, it doesn't. I never even thought about it that way. And then they'll just go through about how many sins the movie has in a way. But
they have like a scorecard.
Yeah.
It's like Joe Bob Briggs, his drive-in totals. Anybody ever watched TNT for Monster Vision?
Yeah,
I think he was around. Yeah.
He's still around, for sure.
And he had like
Shudder.
Oh my God, he would have like I just remember watching like those movies when he had them on TNT. Hilarious.
There's this really interesting thing that I've always thought about that we're kind of touching on here too, which is cool. The need for content to fill in space as the door that opens up to things like Mystery Science Theater, because
Yeah.
Mystery Science Theater cost nothing to make, and
Oh yeah.
it was 2 hours, like right out the. So the Comedy Channel didn't have enough shows to fill up 24 hours of content for a day. That's why, back in the day, you had all these really Higgins Boys and Groover.
I love that show.
That show was amazing.
I did Captain Lucky. Just him as hello kids. Yep.
Supercar.
Super.
I remember they had a show called Short Attention Span Theater.
Yep.
all
Totally
the-
watched it.
Which was the best bits of all the comedy,
The
all
Sweet
stand-up
Life with-
comedy.
The Sweet Life with Rachel Sweet. I remember that one.
Yeah, Night After Night with Alan Hale.
Yep. Onion World.
Yeah, but like this was just like they're like we
Memory
don't know
lane of dorks.
how much
I
would your show
know.
cost. They're like, how much would your show cost? You're like, I don't know, $1,000. I was yes,
give you-
do it.
I'll
can
give you
have 2 a.m. to
$10.
3.
Go for
Yeah.
it.
But you know what?
Exactly.
Talking about all
TBS was
this,
the same way. In a
I
way.
miss those days of the Comedy Channel. I kind of, it's like when they kind of split over to like the sort of daily shows, South Park, drawn together sort of shows. I miss the days of those like less polished, kind of goofy, Higgins Boys and Groover.
Cable used to be like that.
Yeah,
Cable was
Cable
like
used to
that.
be a lot
I feel
more
like
that.
all stations when they first started were like that. Like if you think about the Sci-Fi Channel when it first started, or Nickelodeon was in its infancy when I was a kid, and the weird kid shows that would be on that.
You
Super
can't
weird.
do that on television.
You still can't.
Even
That-
sort of
Norwegian
before that,
claymation.
And
they would
all,
just
all these
play-
weird imports.
they
Even
played a
like,
show called Pinwheel for like 24 hours a day.
Sci-Fi
show was
Channel.
tapped.
fucking terrifying.
Sci-Fi Channel used to have this thing on, like where they would have like television shows. It only lasted like maybe one season, but they would show the entire show.
Yeah.
And I remember they showed the new version of Dark Shadows one week because that only lasted for about 5 or 6 episodes.
Yeah.
And it wasn't actually a bad series. It just, I think it was one. I forget if it was one of these things that just coincided with the Persian Gulf War, and
That's what happened to it.
Yeah,
Oh, I
which is
Forever
unfortunate.
Night they showed Ultraviolet, they showed
Oh.
Lex, all these like really
Lex.
short, like the original miniseries for Lex, and because they later licensed, I don't know if they were involved in making the whole like the longer series, but it was originally like a 3-part miniseries,
Yep.
3 2-hour movies, and like we saw that and it just blew my mind.
Yep. And then they expanded upon it.
Yeah.
Then like there's a lot of stuff in the 90s and early cable, like Babylon 5.
Oh,
Anybody
the
remember that one?
weekday after, it was like the Saturday afternoon sci-fi they had like on
Yeah.
the UHF channels.
Well, yeah, that was through syndication.
Right, that's what I meant.
And they had other shows like, what the heck else did they have? They had a lot of them.
Cleopatra 2525.
Oh,
Sliders.
that show.
Jack
Sliders.
Remember
Jack
that
of all
show?
trades.
Don't get me
Best
started.
Saturday
I love that show so much. I mean, time
one?
travel. It's my thing.
Slideshow,
I mean, it's
Sliders.
Oh, sliders. Okay.
Yeah.
It's one where they go from one world to another.
Now I'm hungry for sliders.
It's like Quantum Leap without Ziggy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like-
exactly.
Andrew, like you were
Or
talking
it's
this
Doctor
earlier.
Who with
out the TARDIS.
Yeah, with
I
a
mean, it's
cell
sort of
phone,
like Doctor Who in some ways.
a 90s
like,
cell
no
phone.
control. But like Simon and Schuster set up an entire organization within a company that they own that just mines big data on the internet and various other sources that it's a combination of what they observe and buy in order to create that goes into an algorithm that outputs book titles. And then they find people to write those books.
Currently.
Like this exists right now. And this is what
Holy
cable's
shit.
like now. Like all the shows that you see on cable are algorithmically generated. And then we see that with Netflix too. So like, for me, it's like when you were
God, that
talking
makes a lot
about
of sense.
Lisa.
Sounds like
Yeah.
a really bad Twilight Zone episode.
Yeah, there used to be a hack for Netflix where you could put in certain things in the URL and it would output these weird combinations of shows like space shows featuring time travel that were also set in Victorian area.
Right, I remember that.
Like you could make these weird things and it would output shows, and they were using that to mine people's interests, and that led to the creation of Stranger Things.
No
We-
fooling.
We
But
are
I feel
all
like-
the product.
We are
You
the
are
product. But I that's really interesting. It's such a like kind of people get creeped out by it, and understandably so. I think like, oh, they're making some kind of weird crowdsourced product. It is kind of creepy. But then I think back to like Val Lewton movies, way before my time. I was born in 1948, not 19. I'm just kidding. But they like studios were doing that sort of thing already, where they were taking titles that they were making up, testing them with a group of people to see if they liked them.
Yeah,
just a test audience, and whatever titles were liked the best by the test audience, they would give that title to a producer like Val Lewton and say, "Here, you're making Curse of the Cat People. We don't care what it is. This is the title of it. Go." And so this was real. It was really almost the same thing. It was sort of like, okay, it's got to be probably scary, there's some fantasy involved to give the kids what they want, but
basically like the producer and Ed Wood. I just changed my sex. That's the title of the film. Go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, same kind of thing that they kept doing because they knew that it would bring the audience in based on their research.
I mean, it goes deeper than that in that like these algorithms actually will dictate like elements of the show beyond just the title.
True. No. You're
like
right.
Movie poster. But that's why I like the internet so much, because like YouTube is still a place where like YouTube is like whatever content you got, put it up. And you can find these, and Twitch is the same. It's like 24-hour people streaming live from their house. And like you can find, it's the closest thing to public access television that I can get in.
Well, speaking as a person who did work in public access television for 20 plus years.
Really?
Love it. Yeah.
Yeah. I actually worked in television broadcasting for 25 years. Of course, the way the business is now is a lot different than when I started. One of the big problems that exists is that there's a lot of content out there. And if you're a creator, you're constantly, you're not even just competing with the new stuff, you're also competing with the old stuff too.
Yeah.
Because there's a licensing and there's everybody they're looking for a track record on a lot of the old stuff. And if you're not going to be able to produce a product to them at a particular price that they can algorithmically see how well it's going to go, then they're like, no, we're not interested, So I think that one of the big problems that exists now is that there's so much attention towards the old franchises and there's so much control over them, i.e. Disney, who owns everything, that nobody wants to take a chance on something new or do something revolutionary again, because again, those franchises were revolutionary. It took a lot to get them to where they are today, but when they were first started, not a lot of people believed in them. Like Star Wars, Lucas was the first fan. Star Trek, Lucille Ball of all people was the one who really kept that thing going.
Doctor Who was an educational show. It was one of these things. There was going to be, you had the doctor and his granddaughter. You had a science teacher, I think a science teacher and a history teacher, and it was going to, teach science, history, just.
And the first 2 seasons, I think half the episodes were history and half the episodes were sci-fi.
And that first season, I think the first 4 episodes were all set like man discovering fire, and that sort of changed with the introduction of the Daleks, which was completely accidental. And it was one of these things. One of the creators of the show absolutely hated what we called BEMs, bug-eye monsters, and the Daleks kind of exemplified it. But that's what caught people's attention, and that's what made the show. That's what began making the show, catapulted it into not only the series but also 2 films starring Peter Cushing in color in the 1960s. So, I mean, without that beginning, you probably we wouldn't be maybe talking about Doctor Who 50 plus years later.
Yeah.
It's like genre is always a good bet when you've run out of all other options. Like you used to be able to see that in the big 3 television networks when that was like a thing that mattered.
Right.
God, what was it? CBS, I think, in the late 80s was number 3 by far, and Fox is barely on the map. They were Married with Children and The Simpsons, and that was it.
Yep.
And they took a chance on Twin Peaks, and then all of a sudden, like, it blew up, and they were like, whoa! And then you got like Northern Exposure, and then that led to X-Files eventually, and all this kind of stuff that unraveled from this desperation.
Yeah.
I just don't know that. I want to believe that like we're going to continue to see that, and everything feels so nostalgic. You know,
Yep.
that's why I didn't like, you know, the last first new Star Wars movie. I can't remember the name of it.
Yeah.
Return of the New Hope.
We all forget what the last Star Wars movie's title was. Don't worry, you're not
Oh,
alone.
thanks. Yeah, me too.
The Rebel Jedi. Is that it? I don't remember.
We're still a little bit traumatized from the last hurrah.
Rise of the Revenge of the Sith.
I was not traumatized. Well, but I was traumatized by anything
They
to
were
do with the Sith.
fine. but it was just
I'll
like,
admit,
I'm like,
I
I'm
will
just
say,
watching A New Hope.
I will say, I went into the theater with The Last Jedi with high hopes, saying this is going to be awesome. I was totally on board the Rey train. I was like, this is going to be awesome. Then I went to see The Last Jedi, and I walked out a changed person.
Oh, so
My psyche
sorry.
had been, I felt like I had been physically punched in the face.
Which is funny because he ended up doing Knives Out, which was a great movie.
Knives Out was awesome.
Well, maybe he should have been doing
Maybe
a film like
he-
that.
Yeah,
and
maybe
it's
he
great.
should have
And
done that.
Franchises are a difficult thing. I mean, that you're taking
They're
on
difficult.
Yeah.
And
I-
you have to have the right director,
Yep.
and you have to have the right writer, and you have to have everything all. But it just felt like, it felt like shrapnel. I was pulling shrapnel out of myself as I walked out of the theater.
I know a lot of people felt like that. It didn't hit me that way, and I think that's a product of the prequels for me.
Mhm.
Because
Okay, yeah.
because of those prequels, I had already let go. I had already said,
Good point.
okay, you know what?
Yep, I
This-
agree.
This is for children. It's okay. If I can enjoy some nostalgia out of it, I'll be glad to. If not, hopefully it's a good sci-fi ride with some good special effects. And okay, I'm gonna say something really controversial here. Y'all are gonna like kick me out the house. I kind of liked bitter old Luke Skywalker.
Oh, I did too.
I
had
was
no
real
problem with
into
that.
that. He was
What's the
grumpy
last
as
movie?
fuck and like had been through the ringer and looked like shit. I loved it.
Oh yeah.
Finally.
Great. But anyway.
Finally. Oh, God.
Just when
he's
he-
like,
And
I mean, that
lived
whole
for him-
scene-
realizing what happened to him.
I lived for him as a young twink too, with his little cute self.
I had-
the whole
No, I
thing.
mean, honestly, he was just the equivalent of Yoda, who was on Dagobah.
Yes.
I mean, he
Yes.
was just grumpy and bitter. And the thing is, you don't think of Yoda as that grumpy, but if you watch the three most recent ones, and then you go back and you watch the original ones again, you look at Yoda and you go, oh yeah, he's grumpy as fuck.
Well, he was putting on an
He's
act for
really
Luke just to
bitter,
test
you're
him.
right.
Yeah.
And he's kind of irritated by Luke. He wants to teach him, but he
Oh,
kind of
Luke's
doesn't.
annoying.
We were
Yeah.
all irritated
Yeah,
by Luke,
Yeah.
he's
so-
tired. He just wants to live in his swamp and eat shitty soup. I mean, that's what he wants to
Who
do.
doesn't? Who doesn't?
He wants to lift his rock with his mind, you know.
That's right. That's right. Just be
Yeah.
left alone to age to 703
Yeah.
or whatever he does.
Like-
Right, exactly.
Ainsley
But I
and
mean, the
feel
scene
same
when-
way.
Yeah. The scene when Luke chucks the lightsaber over his shoulder, I thought it was great. It just kind of walks.
Right.
It just walks away like, oh, fuck off, kid.
I think
You
what
know he
really
can just make it come back if he
Yeah.
wants.
I-
He does it at night.
Or the scene when he's saying like, "Can you feel the force?" and he takes like something like a leaf or a feather, and
Oh,
he just
yeah.
starts like going, "Oh yeah, you can feel it. Oh, you must be really strong at it." And then like slaps her in the hand with it, just like
I think-
completely PO'd Luke.
I think what really kind of got me though when I was watching that movie, it was just such a shift out of the mind. It was like when Leia starts floating through space like Mary Poppins. I was just like, what's going on?
Stop. Just stop.
And
I don't
then
want to
she
have
gets
to
the
relive
icy
that. It
angel
just makes
thing.
I mean,
me-
I'm having like Nam flashbacks with this movie. Oh my god, it was like
You can see Marlon Brando with the shaved
Like-
head saying the horror.
like I was like literally like is my brain was seeing it and my it wasn't comprehending. It's like, wait a minute, is that really happening?
It really did. It really did. They really went there.
I was
like,
actually more upset that they
how?
killed Admiral Akbar. I'll be honest with you.
what?
Yeah, really.
It's like,
And I was
That
like, what
was-
happened to the space gravity?
I
Like,
was-
there
I
was
was-
gravity in space before, and now there's no gravity in space.
Yeah, I
Like,
know.
make up your damn mind.
All right. We're not going there with talking any type of space logic with Star Wars.
No, no.
I mean, look,
Madness
I don't
It
expect.
crashed, so it's falling.
I don't mind like a little fantasy. It's not. It's
It's
important.
fun.
It's science fantasy.
It's science fantasy. You're
Right.
right.
Science fantasy. But there is, I always go by when you write something, because as a writer, because I've written screenplays and done a bunch of stuff, as a writer, when you set rules in motion, you know, you kind of have to follow those rules. You know, space is not a place where life can exist, you know, and that is in your brain. You already have that already figured out, you know.
Well, I think that's why people are getting so pissed off with J.K. Rowling, aside from other things, of her, you know, with the last two, like, Fantastic Beasts movies, is she supposedly created these rules, and then suddenly it's like, nope, I changed my mind. We're going to do something new. Yeah, it's sort of like that thing. It's like, but you just said this sort of happened and that sort of happened. You know, it's like, nope, it's different now because I just feel like it.
Right back to what I said earlier about how George Lucas made the original Star Wars, and he had to compromise with a whole lot of people, and he had to say yes to a lot of things. And then, like, when he got so powerful, when he did the prequels, nobody could say no to him because anybody that said no to him got fired, you know, or didn't get to work. Like, who's going to say no to George Lucas at the height
I just figured it'd be like Dr. Evil in Austin Powers, where he pushed a button and somebody just fell for a trap.
Dr. Evil?
That must have happened. It totally must have.
Yeah,
what did you say?
It probably is.
Does it make sense?
That's the funny thing too.
People who don't listen to my ideas die.
George, I think I'm okay. I'm kind of stuck down here.
Yes, he's been shot. Yeah, no, burned badly. Okay. Speaking of, that's one of my cosplays.
Oh, Dr.
That's the other thing. Actually, that's the other thing we've kind of talked about. You know, just the cosplay culture. Because I know you guys
cosplay
are
culture.
into
What
it.
are you talking about?
I know you.
Who's cosplaying here?
I have
Weirdos.
no idea.
I've completely forgotten that you're wearing.
No, but I mean, it's true. I mean, we've just been sort of sitting here chatting. It just, you know, feels normal. But I know you guys.
This is what I wear on a daily basis.
I know Ainsley and Brian. I know you're big into it. Andrew, you've been big into it. So I mean, it's just, it's one of these things that, you know, it's also become big over the last
Ainsley,
several
why don't you
years.
go ahead with what your favorite cosplay you've done is?
My favorite. Oh my gosh, I wasn't prepared for that.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. It's a big question.
Know what it is.
Wait, what is it?
Oh, you should answer it. It's your question.
Do you have like a top 5?
Yeah. Okay. So there's one that it just makes me laugh, and I love it. The thought of it.
Wait, take your headphones off.
It's Torchwood. Okay. Go
ahead.
This is like mystery right here. Go ahead.
So I did this with my sister. Brian, am I right so far?
I don't know.
Were you right?
I don't know.
It's a Star Trek original series.
No, I was wrong. Okay, I was wrong.
It's a Star Trek original series alien costume that I do with my sister. I actually horribly in this moment am blanking on the name of the culture. They're like, Capellans. So we're Capellan warriors. They all have like blonde Madonna 1989 ponytails, and they wear like fake fun fur, and they throw like throwing stars, and we would dress as these insane Capellan warriors. No one would know who we were, and we would do simultaneous dancing together all over. So that's
and that year I dressed as I happened to dress as a garage rock hipster Andorian. And so
it's a good one.
And so then so there's all these pictures of the three of us together, and you know, we look like a band. Which is
yeah, we do look like a band. The Capellan warriors
awesome.
and the Andorian. Yeah. What did you say my favorite was, Brian?
Should I say, or
yeah, you should totally say.
Tell her.
Reveal.
Jack.
What?
Captain Jack.
Oh yeah, Captain Jack.
Who doesn't love Captain Jack?
I love Captain Jack, and Captain Jack was Captain Jack was really, really fun to play.
He's hysterical in real life.
He's also my favorite actor to see speak. One of.
Oh yeah.
John Barrowman is great. Up there with Nichelle Nichols. I could listen to.
Oh God, I loved his series. It was so good.
I did. Okay, so for me, I've been doing cosplay for about, I don't know, I'd say for the last 5-6 years. Like, because I'm one of those kids that grew up being like tortured every Halloween with the spray painted mask that you got in the box with the schmuck, you know, so you put it on your face and it would start cracking and cutting in your face like,
I remember those days.
Remember those days? I can't
In your
see.
bag and go on the
My
street.
mom wouldn't let me wear those. She would hand make my costumes, and there's some horrific handmade costumes.
And they would smell like the
even
chemical plant they
scarier.
came from.
Oh, you're
those
not
are the funnest.
you're not missing anything.
Trust me, those
Yeah, they
days,
weren't
those are the
bad.
best
They-
days.
I was jealous of those costumes, which was weird looking back.
Yeah, they weren't good. The
you
homemade
messed-
mom ones were probably better.
Yeah, you know what?
Except for
Honestly,
the ghost one where she made it out of a pillowcase, and my head had like points from like the edges of the pillowcase.
oh,
Down.
No, it's that same ghost.
Was it a little bit clanny or was
No.
No, it was
definitely-
double
No, it was
point.
like it was square. It was
Okay.
literally like a pillow?
flat and square like a pillow.
Okay. That's hilarious. You were pillow head.
Quick aside, just real quick
did you
aside.
get a rock?
When
And
I
my
was
face
about
was clearly out of it. She wouldn't let me wear anything with a face with something over my face because she was afraid
Well,
I
it's
would
not
get like
safe.
hit by a car or something.
No.
Yeah.
No, she probably saw the Halloween safety video that I like to play a lot around here.
Oh.
But like it's got lots of great tips for what not to do. And
Those are the videos that would end up on riff tracks.
yeah,
Totally.
totally. Oh, it probably has been a riff track.
Actually,
When I was
Frank and Trace did one that was the Halloween safety ones, which was hysterical because it has like smoke at the beginning, and one was like Willie Nelson.
yeah.
But anyway, so like I've done one of my favorite cosplays was when I did Austin. I did a Dr. Evil cosplay, and I remember getting the costume from I actually paid $200 for this costume for Dr. Evil, and it was a piece of shit. And I was just like, son of a bitch,
Aw.
motherfucker. It was basically like pajama pants, and the top wasn't big enough. So I wore it for a couple of cons. And then like I was in Savers and I found a blue zoot suit. I know.
Savers?
At Savers.
Savers, do you have Savers down there?
I think if
It's
I've
like
heard
a-
of, it's in
It's a thrift
Massachusetts,
shop.
right?
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah,
like a
okay,
thrift
yeah,
shop.
That's
It's like
what I
a
assumed.
it's like a thrift shop like place. And so it was a blue. It was like a
It's like a
pinstripe-
Salvation Army without the band.
Yeah. So it was
Okay.
a blue and like pinstriped looking suit, like long suit, looks like a mod suit from the 60s. I'm like, if I can fit in this, I'm taking it with me. I've put it on, I put the jacket on, the pants were a little bit long. It was $16. I took it home and I said, honey, I got my costume for the next convention in a week. I need to get this stuff. So I literally took it to get it altered. I got a wig. I got like I had glasses to match too. I got the
Perfect.
cravat and I got like all the stuff. And I remember walking around as Austin Powers.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And
That
was
That's a damn good costume, especially if it's like a real vintage suit, just like the he wears. Perfect.
and I can't believe I found it at Savers for $16.
I can't believe someone sold a mod suit from the 60s for $16.
I know, and it's a great
That's-
suit.
Oh,
It's a
I have
crime.
pictures of me in that thing. It looks. I have to get a professional. I gotta get some professional photos of myself done in that suit. That still has it. It's wonderful. And of course, I'm putting together an indie cosplay right now. And Bret told me I don't know what side of the screen he's on for everybody else, but he's over here.
Yeah, he's over there.
So
I'm usually
he
over
said,
there.
He said he's going to be Dr. Henry Jones Sr. and we're going to both do.
I got
like-
the hat for it, so I could do that.
Yes.
We're
Well-
going to definitely have to do that at a convention.
I've only done cosplay a little bit over the last few years, my wife and I, but it's one of these things I kind of enjoyed it. I've done like old Luke cosplay and a few other ones,
Yep.
but I think one of my favorite costumes, Lisa mentioning, Halloween as a kid. One of my favorite ones I ever did was like the 5th grade. I went as Charlie Chaplin. That's just the type of kid I was. And somewhere on my Facebook page, maybe I'll have to repost it again. There's a picture of me in full, white face makeup, mustache painted on, little derby hat, trampish little clothes, dressed as Charlie Chaplin.
That's the only way you
So
can get that
sweet.
mustache, though. Now.
That's so
Yeah.
sweet.
Oh gosh,
I do have to say the one cosplay that I won an award for was Elvira. That's not my.
That was a good costume.
Winning
That was
an
a well
award
done.
was awesome. It was not my favorite. It's kind of painful to wear. Captain Jack is actually a lot easier.
That looks a
Yeah.
lot more comfortable too, Captain Jack. You got the
Captain
long
Jack,
coat.
you have the long coat. Yeah, and it was funny too. Like I'm at a convention as Captain Jack, And I normally it's a long story. I'm gender fluid. I go in the ladies' room because it's the safe thing for me to do, whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm not even really thinking about much of anything because I'm in costume, right? And we're at this huge, thousands of people. They're all
This is in Georgia, by the way.
This is in Georgia.
Oh.
Where you wanna be?
I should have said. And so I'm fully a mini Captain Jack. Just imagine, like teeny tiny, really cute. And so I go in the ladies' room and I'm washing my hands, not even thinking about stuff, kind of like messing with my costume. Something had come undone, so I went in the stall and I'm kind of like messing with it.
And I'm outside waiting.
And he's outside waiting. My sister's outside waiting. And suddenly the bathroom is really quiet, like strangely quiet.
Ooh.
But then I'm like, okay, well, maybe everyone just left. These things happen. And then I hear.
And then security people pass by us and go into the bathroom like, holy shit, what's happening in the bathroom? Is there a bomb?
Right. And I heard like security, like walkie talkies. And I walked out of the bathroom and there were like two people, like imagine Men in Black, except one was a woman at that time, like things in their ears and like walkie talkies and like standing there like they're going to apprehend me. And then I see my sister standing on the other side, like pacing and sweating back and forth. And I realized immediately what happened. So I made my voice go really, really high, kind of like anime character high. And I'm like, hi, is something wrong? Is everything okay? Just so there was like no, like, sure, if you want me to have a vagina, if that's what you're worried about, perfect. Yeah. And so their faces like fell and melted into pools. And they're like, we are so sorry.
You better be, asshole.
Yeah, there was a man in the
best was when,
and I'm like, this is a costume. This is a
90,000 people at Dragon Con
90,000
in Atlanta,
people.
and like half of them are cosplaying. It's really somebody's gonna be like,
I'm in a
there's a man in the bathroom.
when I was
So,
Austin
did you win an
Powers.
award for that? Because you should have won an award for that.
Thank you. I should have for scaring an entire room of people.
That's why I thought.
I mean, apparently you were so convincing as a tiny man.
On behalf of Andrew, Lisa, Brian, and Ainsley, thank you for listening to the Mental Suppository. We continue part 3 of our discussion next week. Until then, this is Bret Herholtz saying,
I knew I'd disturb you.
The Mental Suppository has been produced by Bret Herholtz and Jamie Billings and distributed by M the Media Project. Theme music generously donated by Mr. B, the Gentleman Rhymer. Visit his webpage at gentlemanrhymer.com. We would love to hear from our fans. Email us at mentalsuppository@gmail.com.
Hey there, M the Media Project fans. If you liked today's episode of your favorite M the Media Project podcast, perhaps you'll consider going to smgravesassociates.com/podcast. There, you can select your favorite podcast, click on your favorite episode page, and consider contributing to our Patreon, subscribing to your favorite podcast, and lastly, maybe you'd consider giving us a favorable review on iTunes. Any way you support us supports the great work we do at M the Media Project. Thanks.